Hello and welcome back to the ADHD Goals podcast. I have an extremely fascinating guest for you today. Usually when I'm doing these introductions, it's quite an easy task of listing some of the things that the guest has done. But today I have such a fascinating guest with me that simply the introduction alone could probably fill a podcast episode. I have with me today John Brink, and he is some of the things that he is known for. He's the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. He's a best-selling author of 4 books. One of those books is ADHD Unlocked. He is an ADHD advocate. He's an owner of over 10 companies. He grew up in Nazi-occupied Holland during World War II. Not only that, he's got an honorary doctorate degree at the University of British Columbia and has received the Order of BC, British Columbia. So I don't know really where to start. That's a fascinating story. But how are you today, John?
I'm doing well, Laurence, and be delighted to be on your show. So anytime you want me to pick it up and tell you where I was born and kind of start from there in a fairly quick fashion, then prepared to do that.
Yeah, well, usually with my guests, I usually ask them to tell me about their ADHD and that story. But considering, where you were born and the circumstances of where you were born, that was quite an informative part of your childhood. So tell us about when and where you grew up.
So I was born in Holland, in northeastern Holland, actually. It was in 10 or 15 minutes from the German border, if one can visualize Holland. Mm-hmm. And I was born November the 1st, 1940. Now, the German armies invaded Holland in May of 1940. And my mom and dad were in love. They were married in 1938, had a son, and then quickly a daughter, and then the world was beautiful. They was working, and they had a house, and things looked absolutely fantastic. And then what happened is the German invasion of Holland. My dad was drafted into the Dutch army, and the last thing they heard about him when he was caught in Rotterdam, the big city was bombed and thousands of people died. So for 5 years, they wouldn't know if he lived or had died during the bombing of Rotterdam. So my mom, then pregnant with me, had the 2 little kids, and then me. I was born in November. And the first thing that I remember, things were tough. So the first thing that I remember of the war was in 1943, 44. Hundreds of Allied bombers overhead bombing Germany, in particular in the areas where we were, 10, 15 minutes from the border, eastern Holland, and the bombers would come overhead, hundreds of them. And that sound, even at 3.5 years old, I still remember. There's not any sound like that. And in the middle of the night, my mom would take us outside because she felt safer outside than inside. And in the distance, we could see the cities burning. And so that stayed with me. Then the next thing that I remember as a kid is 1944, 45. It was what they call the hunger winter again. Thousands of kids died and all the vulnerable people died because there was no food. And then it was the coldest winter on record, 1944, 45. We then, the 3 kids together, I've been 4.5 then, and my brother 2 years older than me, and my sister 1 year older. Every morning we would go with gunny sacks into railroad yards looking for anything edible or burnable. And so I can still now feel the feeling of hunger. I still have that with me now, 80 years later, and it was immensely cold. And again, a lot of people died. The next thing that I remember is the liberation of Holland by the Canadian Army in Northern Holland, in particular, April the 12th, 1945. I it made such an impression on me to see the Canadian Army coming in that I always knew from that point forward I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And so I was going to go when I was 17, but my parents wouldn't let me. And then I was drafted in the Dutch Air Force. And then finally I emigrated to Canada when I was 23 in 1965. So the liberation again was tough. Then when the Canadian Army came in, we saw far too much that we should not have seen. Still affected me in the sense of PTSD, stayed always with me still today. And then the inner child is where the little boy then was still with me that saw far too much that he should not have seen. I got counseling for that actually in my 50s. Very, very emotional. And so in any event, then from there and in, my academic history was not the best. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And they said, well, what are we going to do with this guy? And some people said, send him to the mentally challenged school. Fortunately, my parents said, no, we're not going to do that. So they said, well, maybe we'll teach him a trade. Then he can work with his hands. And so my dad was lumber oriented. My grandfather was a master carpenter. So they thought they'd make me a furniture maker. So they sent me at 13 to a furniture factory, and I became a furniture maker. And the evenings I would go to the college, became a furniture maker. And so I loved what I was doing, but kids are hard on each other. So all the friends that I had been in my early teens that gone on to college and university, and me, I became a laborer. So I was pretty much on my own and, was kind of looked at like too dumb, too this, too that, and all the other things. Kids are not very nice to each other sometimes. In any event, it always stayed with me. I always kind of was an optimist. I was already entrepreneurial, would sell anything to make a few dollars or guldens then in Holland, and, worked in sold bottles, distributed papers, anything, and then started working as a furniture maker and then in the lumber industry in Holland. And then in my early 20s, I want to, when I was 18, was drafted by the Air Force, was in the Air Force for at least 24 months, a little bit longer actually than that. And then after that, still the thought of going to Canada was still very much with me. Obviously, I still was troubled I didn't do well academically. And what happens in Holland, no different than anywhere else. At some point, you're going to get a house, you're going to get married. And the question is always, where are your diplomas? Well, I didn't know diplomas. So of any sort. And so, so then I thought I wanted to go to Canada, start over again from the beginning, from new. I wanted to start with nothing. 1 suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, very little money. And I wanted no help from anybody. And my dream was to build a lumber mill. And so I arrived in Canada, July 1965. In Montreal, I took the train across Canada, 4 days, 5 nights. My God, that's a long way. And arrived in Vancouver, went through the immigration department, didn't speak English, didn't know a soul, and didn't have a job. Fortunately, there was a German fella. I told him that I wanted to have a mill, build a mill. He said, go to Prince George. Now, for those people watching us around the world here, is that everybody knows Canada, everybody knows British Columbia, and likely will know about Vancouver. And British Columbia is a big province. We are 500 miles north, or 800 kilometers north of Vancouver, which puts it in the center of British Columbia. I arrived there 60 years ago, and I'm still there today. And came off the bus, and with my suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and couldn't speak the language, didn't have a job, didn't know a soul. But I counted my money at least 3 times. I had $25.47. But attitude, no matter how tough things are, I always believe tomorrow will be better. I had passion. Whatever I do, I give it 125%. And work ethic, I work harder than anybody. And it's always, and what will follow is success. That always remain my foundation: attitude, passion, work ethic. And so that's what I did. Started as a cleanup man and then lover pilot. And within a year and a quarter, I was already a superintendent of one of the larger lumber mills here in this region. Within 10 years, I started my own company, then developed it into what we now call the Brink Group of companies, about 10 different companies. And they're quite successful. And then since that time, the other part that changed my life really is that one day I walked into a bookstore here, and I came here in I was already here for 32 years in the northern area of British Columbia. And I walked into a bookstore and I picked up a book. I still don't know why. And the book's title was Driven to Distraction. And as I opened the book was written by Dr. Halliwell, and it was about ADHD. I still have the book, actually. And the more I read in the book, and I said, oh my God, that's me. And so I wrote in the book on the inside cover in Dutch, now I finally know who I am. And so I still have that book. And in fact, I'm a very active podcaster. We have done about 300 podcasts that I'm hosting and about 150 that I'm guesting. And my podcast, On the Brink, number 203, is an interview with Dr. Halliwell.
Oh, wow.
Can you believe it? He wrote the book in 1993. I bought the book in January of 1997, and I interviewed him about a year ago here on my podcast, 203. Now, the interesting part about the podcast is now, when I found out about ADHD through his book, and that was me, I already was in business. I was quite successful. I was obviously stigma attached to it. I had no idea what it meant, ADHD. But the more I found out, now I'm building businesses, go to banks and lend hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to build companies. Now, if I do that quite successfully, obviously, what am I going to say? Oh, by the way, I should tell you, I have a mental disease called ADHD. They would say, well, have a nice day. So I didn't do that. So in any event, I learned more and more and more about it on Google. It took me 5 years before, and I was 57 at the time that I bought the book. And so I was then 62 years old. I went to my doc, who was a personal friend, delivered our 2 daughters. And he said to me, hey, John, why are you here? I said, I think I got ADHD. And so we looked at it together and did that. And yes, I do. And so I was then 62 years old. And the more I found out about it, I initially thought, from the information that I did, that's maybe 8% of the population have ADHD. I can found that it is likely more than that, quite a bit. And so, again, for those people watching us, watch my On the Brink podcast 203 with Dr. Halliwell. And I suggested to Dr. Halliwell, at least in my mind, and he's the expert, not me, other than having it, Dr. Halliwell is ADHD and dyslexic. I am too. I'm not only ADHD, I'm dyslexic as well. And so, as we talked about it, I suggested, at least in my mind, for his opinion, I said that I believe 8% is probably more than that. It's probably around 20%. He said, no, John, it's 25% or more. I agree with him. And then the other part that I suggested to him in our interview is that it's all the time that I've been in business and in board of directors and do all these other things. I'm very, very active in a lot of areas, being on numerous industry boards and corporate boards and all of those kinds of things. And the more people I meet, especially in the executive ranks, I believe then, and I suggested that to Dr. Halliwell, in my mind, that 50% of the successful, and the operative is successful, entrepreneurs or CEOs are ADHD. He said, no, John, more than 75%. I agree with him. And so that's where I am. And then the more I found out about it, the more I started including him also in demand public speaker or doing keynote presentations all over the place. And every so often I speak about 8 issues around ADHD, but it's more about entrepreneurship, a number of other things that I talk about. But I usually throw in my ADHD, and then I felt I had to write about it. And so I wrote a book called ADHD Unlocked, and it's written by an ADHD mind. So you can open it up anywhere, go backward or forward. It's always interesting. Every page is interesting. And this one has been very, very successful. And so that's where I am. And then, finding out, what changed me likely more than anything, Laurence, is the decision to go to Canada.
Yeah.
Then going physically to Canada, start anew again. So it gave me confidence that I had the ability equal to anybody else, not to prove to anybody else that I did, but for my own benefit. So obviously, already when I was successful, people would say to me, you should write a book about it. Now, writing books is not easy. And so the first book that I wrote is after I found out about, and after I was 62. Actually, the first one that I wrote is about 6 years ago. I'm 84, November the 1st this year. And so about 6, 7 years ago, I started writing a book. This book, against all odds, it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. And, and it's not about hoorah, hoorah, how successful John is. No, it's not about that. It's just the opposite, going through all the ups and downs and all the challenges along the way. That's why I wrote the book.
Yeah.
And the second one that I did is ADHD Unlocked.
Well,
So
I wonder when you talk about, your, excuse me, the dog's barking. When you talked about you getting diagnosed later on or discovering you had ADHD much later on, I wonder and you said you found that it was I finally understand myself. It was almost that missing piece. And up until that point, what challenges did you recognize then, now that you knew about ADHD? What challenges had you faced during your life that could be attributed to ADHD?
Well, obviously, the reason that I failed grade 3 and 3 times grade 7 is that attention issues were some that if it is something I'm not interested in, I just block it out totally. And I live in a different world then. And so a lot of times, if I would have been in the classroom and they talked to me about what did you do an hour ago, I would have no idea, not a clue. And so that was the first one, attention issues of things that were not of interest to me. However, I was always then already even a good writer, and I was very good with numbers, but I was not good in a setting with a whole lot of other stuff that I had no interest in. And so that was one of the first ones. And then obviously I already had the ability to write and to be good at numbers. And then the other part that I did, even when I was young, I would listen, go all over the place to find people that were speakers about topics of success, maybe entrepreneurs or business or all those kind of things. And I would usually by train. I didn't have a car or anything like that, but I would go anywhere that I could find people that had interesting topics to speak about. And I kept doing that even when I was in Canada. And so there was no question in my mind, but I never quite understood why was I different? And so to reconcile me took me a long time. The other part is I was not a good communicator. And so I was good communicating in a circle where a lot of times in my companies, we pay hundreds of people to have discussions with people in a small circle, about 3, 4, 5 in my own setting was okay. Outside of that, I wasn't. And until 1990 or just before that, that somebody suggested to me that I would go with them, attend a meeting of Toastmasters.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, what are you going to do there? It's about communications, and I said, is anybody going to ask me a question? No, you just sit there and watch it. I said, okay, no, whatever. Yeah. So I went down there, and halfway through the meeting, somebody said, hey, John, tell us all about it. I said, oh my God, I'll never go back here.
Yeah.
So I could have crawled out of there physically, really. But I didn't. I stayed there for 10 years. And I became a distinguished Toastmaster, which is the highest level in Toastmasters. And for those people watching us around the world, what is Toastmasters? Toastmasters is about communication skills. And contrary to what some people think, it's not about speaking. Speaking is one element, but it's not the most important. The most important probably is be a good listener. And the second one is likely speaking on your feet and articulating interaction on discussions, either in listening, reply, or in topics that you're discussing, to be on your feet and speak about you. That is part of Toastmastering. And I learned that skill set there. And then the other one is that become a good speaker on different topics, and a lot of them impromptu. So for me, if I look around North America in particular, and you're familiar with it, there's probably 450,000 people in Toastmaster clubs in North America, Canada, and United States, and more around the world. Probably 10 million people at some point were part of Toastmastering for a duration of time. You don't have to go all the way. I did, because it was important to me. And so I became a distinguished Toastmaster. Of the 10 million or more people, less than 1% probably are at the DTM level. And so I am, and that changed my life. So in addition, the Canadians liberating us, going to Canada, starting from the beginning, Dr. Halliwell, driven to distraction, then from there on in, discovering Toastmasters and unlocking, I developed confidence. And the more I understood about ADHD, I don't only believe, I know it is a superpower. And that's how I refer to it. And that's how I use it today.
Yeah.
And the key becomes, for those that are benefiting from, not affected adversely by, have to have ADHD. The key is to unlock that potential and find that niche. So usually if I give presentations, sometimes in cases, I'm going to do a presentation in the next 2 months for one of the provinces here, their the Provincial ADHD Association, and do a keynote there. And I do some of those selectively, because it takes me 2 days to go there, come back, and do all that kind of stuff. But in any event, one of the last ones that I did, and on different topics, by the time I'm done with my presentation, I'm a very, very good presenter. I know that. And then I'm done, and I talk about the topic of ADHD, and I ask, is there anybody in the audience that is ADHD? And usually at least 10% of them, or in a few of them, will raise their hand. Then by the time I'm done in my presentation, a lot of people in the audience are saying, damn, I wish I had it too.
I wonder, when you, if we take you back to that first visit that you went to the Toastmasters, and you were asked to sort of get up and speak, what was John like then, in terms of what challenges did you have with communicating and public speaking? Was it something to do with the ADHD that was meaning you couldn't like organize your thoughts and able to speak, or was it something else that you learned through Toastmastering that allowed you to go on this journey of being able to communicate better?
Yeah, it's a good question, Laurence. Most people will say that they fear public speaking even more than death.
Mhm.
I understand that. And that being said is the case with most people that have not done public speaking. That was one issue. Obviously, that I was no different then. But in my case, it was the lack of self-confidence as a result of failing, academically in Holland, obviously, and still here, and then feeling still I had not resolved the issue as to why me, why am I different, why is that? I still hadn't figured that part out, and then as I then became more and more involved, I then developed that self confidence that and that is so important to anybody in any case, but especially in ADHD. And so once I understood it and became very active in podcasting, uh, you know, the sorry, been just working on the computer here for a second. Okay, there we go. So that the more I started working on it, the more confidence I created in myself, and then the more I understood it, and then obviously, then being diagnosed in 1997, or when I was 57 years old, then everything became clearer to me, and then it become even more important for me to do presentations, not only about ADHD, but also about which I believe is linked self-confidence and feeling that you are as good or no less than, and ADHD is a superpower, has immense potential, and gives people that special drive in areas where they have an interest in. And so, and then I felt I had an obligation, especially in my case, that already being look at for our people listening to us. I was 13 when I left school. I was looked at like a failure, a laborer, and being called all kinds of names that are associated with failing. And then it took me till I was 62, and nearly 50 years until I got a diagnosis of
Mhm.
ADHD. I found a book when I was 57, got diagnosed, and when I was so for 50 years, although I was already successful, but it affected me. And so I felt I have an obligation to speak out, share my story about it, and then say that my experience has been it is an asset, not a liability, and it has the potential, and it does in a lot of cases, because a lot of the most successful people in the world, ADHD, and there virtually is not a week that goes by that I don't. I do about 6 podcasts a week. 3 or 4 of them are when I'm hosting some of the most prominent people around the world. And there is not a week that does not go by that somebody says, I've never talked to anybody about that, but I believe I'm ADHD as well. Just today I did somebody, and the lady then said respectfully, fantastic podcast actually. And she said she has 3 sons, and can you believe it? They are, she said, ADHD. And then she said, and I don't know where they got it from. I think they got it from my husband. And to myself, I said, no, no, sweetheart, they have it from you. But I could not say that. But so it is amazing. So I've come to the conclusion, Laurence, that I believe that more than at least 30% of the population, both male and female, although females presented differently than
Mhm.
males do, and we know that, are ADHD.
Mm. I think you're right. In terms of a lot of the initial research, it was mostly only done on boys, so there wasn't really enough information to actually notice that the girls present ADHD in a much different way. I mean, I personally, right, I think my ADHD, I wasn't a hyperactive, restless kid. I think I present in a much more female way than it's a lot more internal restlessness. So I think, now that we've got this more broader understanding of what ADHD and how it affects us, is we're now seeing more and more people identifying with it.
Right.
Um, I wonder with you. You sounded like from what you've said. You were successful already before you got your diagnosis of ADHD. I wonder what happened. What did you notice after that you discovered and learnt more about ADHD? Did that almost open up the doors? Did you see an acceleration, or what
Absolutely.
changed for you?
It explained everything.
Yeah,
So I was at peace with who I was. I finally figured out that is me. And so and then the other part that has become very, very important for me, speaking in particular doing presenting to younger people, that I say that is you are special. There is only one of you on this earth, and everybody is somewhat different, but you are special. Too many people feel this is not right, that's not right, this is not right, I have to do this and that. What do other people think about me and are far too preoccupied, but you are special. That doesn't mean better than. It simply means that that person, it's not based on religion or anything like that, but that person is special in their own way. And they have to be able to reconcile who they are and be at peace with that. Now, everybody is not, and that applies to people ADHD or whatever, right? A lot of people say to me, how do you do all the things that you're doing? You got about 10 companies, you're writing books, you have done 4, and you're working on 2 more that come out next year. And then you're probably one of the most active podcasters around the world, and you do all of the. How do you do it? I say ADHD. That's how I do it.
mhm,
And so I'm driven. At 84, I'm very, very active. The other one you made references to in the opening is that also I stay fit and healthy is very, very important. And
yeah,
last book I wrote is Driven to Distraction was one of them, and then the other one is Living Young, Dying Old. And it's a picture of me actually
yeah.
uh,
So
bodybuilding.
in the intro, I said you were the oldest competitive bodybuilder living in North America, and I'm interested to know when did that start? Have you always been into bodybuilding, or was that something that happened later on?
It happens later on, and that's another very important topic because you have to be physically, mentally fit, and health and fitness is critical.
Mm,
And living young, dying old. The point is, age is just a number. It's quality of life that counts, and so everybody gets a shock at somewhere in life that is reality, and that happened to me in 2008 when I was 68 years old. I had a case of diverticulitis. That is a breach in your colon. And in most cases, it doesn't rupture. In mine, it did. And
mhm,
then the toxicity attacks the other organs, and you have a limited amount of time to fix it. And I have a high threshold of pain. That's not good. It's put you down. And so I came this close.
mm,
So, and then all of a sudden reality set in. My wife is a vegetarian. I didn't listen well. I listened to her, but not as well as I should have, could have. And and then I started to think about it more in terms of diet. And then the other part that I did, no different than many others, at the end of the year, we say we're going to do this, that, and that. And then we're going to buy a membership to the gym. And then 2 weeks after that, you find 100 reasons as to why, you're just too busy.
mm,
And so I knew I had to do that. And so what I then did is, I got a trainer and started working out. And then at the same time, I started to look very, very closely at my diet. It's mainly plant-based. I'm vegan, 90-10, likely. And so in 2009, after I recovered from the operation, they took 20 centimeters out of my colon, or 8 inches. And, so since that time I've been okay, but I'm more conscientious about diet, working hard. And after I had been in, so that was when I was 68 years old. Then I was training since 2009. After training, I very actively with the trainer. Somebody said to me after about 5-6 years, "Have you ever thought about competing?" I
Mm-hmm.
said, "Oh, me? Yeah." And I said, "Why not? It's a challenge."
Mm.
So that's what I did. And then I started working out even heavier. And then number of years later, I went to competing in Northern BC, came in bodybuilding, second in physique, third in bodybuilding. Then that qualified me provincially. I came in second in bodybuilding, third in physique. They qualified me for the nationals in Canada in the Arnolds. And that was in 2018. But then COVID came. And so then now again, I'm training for the Arnolds again in 2025, when I'm 85. And, and I've already sent messages to Arnold. I want to get him on my podcast, On the Brink, because I want to tell him I'll be back. And so, and that, kidding, that's a picture of me, and that I say, especially now when a lot of people say, is that, when you're over 80, ready for the nursing home, and you need, mentally you don't have it, and all of that kind of stuff. I said, no, that's not what it is. Age is just a number, it's quality of life.
Yeah.
And then I'm not saying don't wait as long as I did till in my 60s. The earlier you start being conscientious of don't drink, don't smoke, do all the obvious, and then get lots of rest, make sure your body stays fit and healthy, active. Just mean you have to be a bodybuilder or an Olympian, but at least stay active. Your body extremely forgiving, but you can only abuse it for so long, and then it's going to give up. Most people in the last decade of their lives are not very good.
Mm. Well, when I talk about exercise, or in relation to ADHD, I mean, it's so useful, so incredibly helpful for generating that dopamine that we need, because we've got that lack of it in feeding the executive functions. But most of us tend to approach exercise at points and times in our life when we're like, oh, we want to look better. Maybe it's just after Christmas and New Year, they join a gym in January, or they want to get looking good for the summer, to go on their summer holidays. And we set these goals for ourselves that are all like vanity based. I want to look great. And then after a few weeks, when those results don't materialize, particularly if we've got ADHD, we then just say, well, I'm not interested now. We've got an interest-based nervous system, and it's like, we drop that project. And the way you're talking about it in terms of being fitter for the better quality of life, and knowing what dopamine can do for our brains and help us with our ADHD, I ask my clients to consider that the exercise as not to look great, but to as if like a fuel, use it for fuel for your body, and take that goal of looking great away, because you'll only fail at that if that is your goal. Use it as, I need to get some fuel into my body today. I need to do some exercise. And then you'll find that by feeling better, with the goal being to feel better, you will eventually look great anyway, because, it's a byproduct of it.
I agree with that, and that the lack of commitment is not only unique, and I'm not saying that you're suggesting to people that have ADHD. It's very general that not too many people stay the course, because it becomes a chore in some cases, going to the gym And for me, to make sure that it happened, my life is all built around meetings. That's what I do with all the companies that I have and other things that I do. The other part about it is that, again, now focusing on ADHD in my case, if, as I said before, the 2547 is one issue, but attitude to me is important. I believe tomorrow be a better day no matter what. Passion is that no matter what I do, if I love what I'm doing, I give it 125%. Work ethic, I work harder than anybody. And so what has happened to working out has become a passion to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Being healthy and fit has become a passion. That then my ADHD mind takes advantage of that, because once I have that, I'm very good at what I'm doing and very committed.
Yeah.
That's what.
It's
So
about leveraging those strengths of the ADHD to commit to.
absolutely.
Yeah, because I noticed that you mentioned, when you started working out, you had a PT and a personal trainer, and that's obviously great for accountability because if you've got to turn up for somebody else because somebody else is involved, then it means you can't back out. But also eventually you added the competitive bodybuilding. So that becomes a challenge then. And that's another aspect of almost like gamifying what we're doing. I find I can find it very difficult to go to the gym unless somebody else is involved, whether it be a PT or a friend. But I find myself the most regular exercise I get is from playing football, and I'm talking about in England, so that's soccer.
Right.
So I play because it's competitive. It's in the diary. There's other people involved, so I've got to turn up, and for me, that's far more easier to commit to, and I enjoy it a lot more than necessarily going to the gym. But it's understanding what your strengths and weaknesses are, and using those to help you maintain the course is really useful.
And the reward, Laurence, the reward is healthy living. Your body feels better. You stay fitter, if that is a word. And so the other part is that you look good. Like at 84, saying, hello, this is me in my mid 80s, and that's what I look like. And saying that nobody is challenging the fact that I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. No one. And saying, if you are, challenge me, and I'll come down, visit you, and we'll start lifting some weights and doing all those kind of things if you want to. But the point is simply not, look at me, I'm superior to anybody else. No, I say this what it can do for you. It doesn't have to be like that, but staying fit and healthy is critical, because when I get up, even now, I usually get up at 5:30 in the morning, and then I always make my bed. I'm always in a hurry. I always think I'm late. And I usually work at least 12 hours a day, and and I love what I'm doing.
Mm. I wonder, you mentioned that you've got, you over 10 businesses. I mean, are you still running all of those concurrently now?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you manage with ADHD I mean, because quite often, I mean, I've been in a position where I've said, right, I want to start various different projects because of my ADHD, I tend to have a bit of shiny object syndrome where I go, oh, that would be great, and I think, oh, I could start doing this, setting up a business in that, and if I was to, you know, paint my, paint a picture of my perfect day, it would to maintain that interest, it was be able to dip in and out of different projects or businesses, but in reality, being able to set that infrastructure up, being able to maintain that starting from scratch is very difficult if you don't have the infrastructure or support or people around you that either take care of the bits that we may not want to do with ADHD, or we struggle to do with ADHD. So I wonder, how did you reach that point where you were able to maintain 10 businesses and still enjoy and do what you do?
Well, it's a very fair question. The silos that we have, the one is lumber, and I have lumber mills, three of them here, and still looking at other ones to buy. But I started it from the ground up, right from the bottom up. And the key is always to have a team around you. And then the other one is warehousing, distribution, and logistics. I bought an existing company and then made it bigger. And then the third one is real estate, both residential, commercial, and industrial. And then the fourth one is media. And media is just recent, more or less, compared to the other ones. Is that means we are doing books and, both managing the whole process of the books, including distribution, do public speaking, do podcasting, and likely we are in the process of setting up a platform that we'll probably start in the next 2 or 3 months. So those are the 4 silos that are active. And under that umbrella, there's probably 10 different companies. Most of them are managed independently, but still, the head office then being me and my team are managing the direction and the managing of the budgets and all of those kind of things.
I wonder, quite a common thing that I hear, and a lot of the listeners listening they find themselves either self-employed or turning to entrepreneurship because they have ADHD and they struggle to fit in the box of a job or a company, where they're unable to have that flexibility around what they want to do in their strengths, or struggle with in their weaknesses. And so they decide to become self-employed or set up their own business, because the dream is I can I've got the freedom to do what I want now. But the challenge is then, when you step outside of a company where other people are taking care of different things, is that you might have more freedom to do the things that you want, but you've also got to do all the other things that somebody else might have been doing. And I suppose when you're starting out, it can be quite challenging. If you're aware that you've got ADHD, you might be aware that these will be challenges, and therefore you might find yourself looking to outsource some of those things. But if you are not aware that you've got ADHD, it can be quite common to work extra hard at those things that you feel are challenging, because you feel like you should be able to do them. And I wonder, how did you find it when you were starting out? Were you able to identify there were certain things that you found challenging, or did you just work extra hard at them? Or, I mean, you said that you had a team with one of the companies that you bought, so there was a structure there. But I wonder, were you ever starting out just on your own and telling yourself, well, these bits are really hard? How did you cope with those?
Well, the first company that I started was in 1975. That is the company Brink Forest Products, part of the Brink group of companies. I started with 3 employees, no money, and just an idea and a concept is that, that the industry was already dominated by big companies. For me to then start it was very, very difficult. But for whatever you do, there are always, staying the course. And the advantage that I had is that I had so much experience becoming a furniture maker when I was 13 years old. That gave me an advantage. And actually, I should add another part to it. A lot of people say to me when I give presentations, and I tell them about, I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times, and saying, does that bother you that you did that you failed and the other ones went further to your college? And I said, yeah, it still bothers me today. Really, really, very, very much. And he said, really? Yeah. I said, I should have quit earlier.
Mhm.
Tongue in cheek somewhat, but
Yeah.
the point that I'm making, the experience that I developed was unique. And so, and then what you're talking about in terms of managing in the box, the standard approaches to managing, I never did that because I taught myself what the box looks like and if where it works and where it doesn't work. So I tend to be, even if I'm organized, when I'm involved in other companies, I always look outside the box. How about this? How about that? How about this? How about that? Why not this? Why not that? If I wouldn't have had ADHD, I didn't know it then, I would likely not have been able to be successful with my first company.
Hmm. I wonder, when we talk about the metaphor of the box, and I've spoken with guests before about, how school and work tends to be that metaphorical box that we get put into, because that's the way society has been made, is for the neurotypical person. But I wonder if we think back to um, what was going on when you were born, and what was happening in Holland. Um, you know, how what was the norm? How did that affect the box that was around you then? I mean, I suppose you were sort of really quite young at that point, but did that have an effect on you? How were you able to lead a normal life when all that was happening?
I never led a normal life.
Mm,
There's such a thing as a normal life. I presume a normal life that you're referring to is that living in tranquility and city, whatever you call it, and we live on First Street. We have always lived there. My brother, my sister are there, and they went to school, and everything was good. And then at one time, we had a car accident. We crippled the car a bit, but nobody got hurt. And that's the main thing that happened in our life. Otherwise, it was very, very normal. And for me, that was not the case. When I was born, it was war, and
mm,
it was a dictator had taken over, and it was going to kill us. And my dad, and it was always pressure and stress from the bombers overhead to seeing in the distance the cities burning, and then seeing far too many people getting shot and killed around our area, blowing up bridges, and we were right there and never know if somebody knocked on the door. People up the street, they knocked on the door, picked up the people that they wanted, mainly the males, sent them to Germany, and they came never back. So there was always fear. And then there was always hunger and the feeling of hunger. Or if it is not today, it maybe be tomorrow. So that was part of it. And then obviously failing grade 3 was difficult for me, same as grade 7. And then feeling that I was just as smart as the others, it would be important for me to start over again from the beginning. And then going to Canada, I had to start with nothing. And so that's what I did. And then fairly quickly thereafter, I started building the one company and then the other ones.
mm,
And so it has never been normal for me. Normal for me is always in transition.
mm,
And that is either in spite of or because of. It probably is a combination of all the above.
mm. I mean, people often talk anecdotally about having wake-up calls before they do something or take control of their life, and even to the certain extent you mentioned when you had your colon, that it caused you to work out more. But I wonder if maybe the fear that and hunger that you talk about in your childhood maybe always had shaped you to be optimistic, because you've got optimism you've mentioned. Um, maybe that has always would you say that maybe has always driven you to say anything is possible, and nothing could be the outcome can't be as bad as what I've experienced in the past?
To me, you can
Yeah.
do anything and to have a positive attitude. So people are natural negative, saying if it is sunshine today, say, oh, it's probably going to rain tomorrow. I try to keep those people out of my life is because that's not who I am. Is that no matter how tough things are, I know they will be better tomorrow. And so that's always been part of who I am. But it never kind of, all the pieces fell together because of coincidences. The Canadian Army liberating us, the dream was go to Canada. Then the other part, failing the schools, I always felt that I was just as smart as the other ones. And then, not better than, but at least, and then, then going to Canada and starting from the bottom up, I did that on purpose to prove me that I could do it. And so hence, that's why I wrote the first book, Against All Odds. And, so the other part is kind of interesting on the book that you may find interesting. All the books, can you see this one? But it's on the bottom. What's the price?
$25.47.
Okay, does that mean something to you?
It's how much you had when you came over, yeah.
So all my books are $25.47.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the story, Laurence.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, you've got so much going on. I wonder what is next. I mean, you're doing the competing in 2025. Is there anything else on the horizon that you've got coming up?
Yeah, we're going to start a platform.
Yeah.
On the internet, so globally.
Yeah. And that, so that's fascinating. That's the more media side thing.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I'm gonna, for any listeners that want to learn more about your books, I'm gonna send them in the show notes to your website, johnbrink.com, and where you can see all those books that you've got published, including the audio books, and they're narrated by yourself.
Yes, they are. And I'm dyslexic, so it takes me longer to do it, but I think it's very, very important for me to do it myself.
Yeah. And you mentioned for any listeners that want to check out your podcast, it's called On the Brink.
Yeah, with John A. Brink. And they are on YouTube and all the other ones, all over the place.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think we have about 350,000 or so subscribers on YouTube, I think.
Yeah.
So
I thought you were going to say 350,000 episodes. I was like, wow.
No. We are approaching 300 episodes on hosting. We're probably 150. I'm a guest as well. So we're approaching 500 or so.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, John, for taking the time to talk with me. It's been a fascinating conversation. And I wish you all the best for your competition in 2025. And I hope you enjoy the working out on the way.
Thanks, Laurence. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, there we have it. Thank you so much for listening this far. If you want to hear more episodes, then please subscribe on YouTube or whatever podcast platform you use. It really helps to spread the word. So if you know anyone this episode could help, then please share it with your friends. If you want to follow me on social media, I am on Instagram at ADHD_goals, and you can find me on Facebook too. If you want to get in touch with the show, then you can email me at hello@adhdgoals.co. And finally, if you're struggling to manage your ADHD and you would like me to be your coach, then please head over to my website and get in touch. Until next time, bye for now.